Good morning, Miramar, and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Tamara G. As always, you can check us out on all of our social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at City of Miramar. And with me, I have a very good friend. I actually see her almost every day in my other life as a journalist and on the air and radio here in South Florida. But she has now written a book, and I would love to talk to her about this because I didn't even know she was an author. We've got Jennifer Cody Kemp with us, and she has written this book called The African Princess. And so happy to have you, Jen, in your other world now.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. And yes, it's nice to be able to cross worlds with you.
You
You're one of my favorite
oh,
people.
so we've got to talk about that because for folks who don't know, you are a very high-powered, very successful sales executive. You've been working in the world of radio for many, many years. How did writing a book come about? You just woke up one morning and said, "You know what? I'm gonna write a book."
Well, it certainly doesn't work like that. But yes, I've been in advertising for about 25 years now, in radio. And
Started when you were five. Uh-huh.
yes, when I was five, yes. But writing was always, I was a big reader growing up. I loved reading as a teenager, young kid. I just loved reading. And so I always thought I wanted to write something. And I thought, like, probably late in my 20s, I was like, I wanted to write my story because I felt like I wanted to tell my story. Like, I think I have a pretty unique upbringing and, some fun stories, some heroic tales and, things that we've overcome that I would have loved to share with people. Now, that's not the story I end up writing, but that story is still on the burner. And I partnered with a writing another writer who I love her writing, and we became friends, and we just got to talking. And one day, I mentioned something about this character, the African princess, Princess Sarah Bonetta Forbes, and she was like, "Wait a minute, what?" And we had this moment where she was brought up the same way I was brought up. Like, she had heard of this princess as a child, and I'd heard about Princess Sarah from my grandmother. So I was raised by my grandmother
Mhm.
in little old Stuart, Florida. And she would tell me stories about African history. Things about like Mansa Musa, like Queen Amina, and Shaka Zulu. And
Yeah.
sometimes I thought she was making it up.
Cleopatra.
Yeah, exactly.
Cleopatra.
But when you're a little kid, it's like, Grandma, is this stuff for real? Like, are you for real? But it was important to her for me to learn about the African history, not just African American history, which was all slavery. It was that was the history that we were taught. And so this was one of the characters that she actually talked about. And it was funny when I was speaking with my writing partner now on this, and she was like, "Oh my God, my mom told me about Princess Sarah too." And PBS had just done a big, like, 52-piece story
Mhm.
on Queen Victoria, who is a major part of this book.
Mhm.
And like, episode 26 was Princess Sarah's story when she was brought to court. And when I saw that, that's what prompted me to bring it up to Maximilian. And it was just like, oh my God. And we just decided this was the book we were going to write. We wanted to create, this series. And, that was about a little over 2 years ago. It was during the pandemic. Everybody was looking for something else to do,
To
right?
do, yep.
So,
Well, and so again, another one of my worlds, PBS. For people who don't know, I also work part-time for them as well.
yeah.
I always say that when you watch PBS, you learn things that you never hear on, regular radio, regular TV. They are always doing educational programming, and it's just amazing what you can learn. Now, this is a fictional work, but it is based on a true character.
Right, it's historical fiction.
Okay.
So this it's based on a historical figure who she was an actual person. She was born Amoba Aina in West Africa. And so her origin story which is what the book is based on, is actual truth. Is based on Queen Victoria's um, journals,
Mhm.
as well as some of Princess Sarah's journals that she kept later on in her life as well.
Now, there's always too been this rumor that Queen Victoria may have been African in nature. I've heard it, but has it been proven or not?
Right. So that yeah, you're absolutely right. There are several stories that her ethnicity kind of is a little a mixed heritage that
Hmm.
she comes from. Obviously, that's something that's very guarded. Fortunately, when Queen Victoria passed away, her daughter took her journals and redacted a lot out of them. So, because Queen Victoria was a huge journaler, she every day, twice a day, three times a day, she loved writing and just kind of telling her tale and getting her story out on paper. But when she passed, her daughter took it on herself to kind of, I'm sure in a way she probably was trying to protect her mother, because that's what people do, right? They
Right.
don't want everybody to know the whole story because they've grown up a certain way. So yeah, there's definitely some rumors that she was a little mixed heritage, for sure.
She had
Yes,
some melanin in her. And for
yes,
those who don't know,
yes,
Queen Victoria is either the grandmother or great grandmother of Queen Elizabeth. So that's
right.
why that's not too far down if she's only
It's
the
not.
grandmother or the great grandmother of Queen Elizabeth, not too far down in the family heritage there. But let's talk a little bit more about the African princess. So again, if you're just joining me, we are speaking with author Jennifer Cody Kemp. She has written this book. It is her debut novel, The African Princess. It is going to be part of a series. We just heard that. Let's talk a little bit about the writing because, as you mentioned, and does this happen to a lot of writers where you have one thing that you're thinking that you're going to write, and then all of a sudden a story comes from out of nowhere that this is what your first book is. This wasn't what you had planned on writing.
Absolutely. Yes, it's totally my story. It's not the book that I've been working on for the last 10 years. And I'm sure there plenty of writers can agree with me that sometimes you work on something for years, 10 years. I talk to people, they have a book they've been working on for 20 years. And this was not the book that I thought would be my debut novel. It's not even, and I have several other projects, historical fiction. I'm a big history buff, so I love taking some of the historical pieces and then creating something a little bit more lively or, a what if situation. I have a great book and I'm hoping that I can get out in a year or two that is a what if kind of situation. But yeah, it was fun though. It kind of came together in a way where me and my writing partner, just came up and we both were like, well, let's write a book. And, the writing process, I'm sure it's different for everyone, but for me, it's, you know, you just, for me, I just basically vomit the story on a page, on the
Okay.
page, you just got to get it out, and then you go back and you see the parts that are important. Then you follow, your storyline and make sure you have plot points and make sure this makes sense and that makes sense. And then the editor comes back and says, this is crap.
And then you have to start all over again, right,
The
Jen?
editor comes back and says, get rid of this chapter. Why are
Okay.
you talking about this? What's going on? Like you're like, what? It's my baby.
Right.
What do you
So, and I
mean?
and I would love to talk about this being your baby because you're calling it historical fiction. What is the difference between actually writing history and the real facts versus the historical fiction? Like, how far can you take um, your choices of what you want to make true and not true?
Well, I mean, history is history, right? The facts are the facts. And so for me, I have a level of respect for the character and the storylines that I've created for her are basically built on the character and how she is portrayed factually. So how she was very intelligent. She was musical. She was inquisitive. She was very courageous. She was loyal. So the fiction part that I'm taking and creating this story is based on actual facts. Now, whether she did all the things that I'm saying, no, there are some parts of it that you expand. That's why you get to throw in the fiction part, right?
Right, right, right.
um,
and it would probably be hard to find other than, Queen Victoria who journaled, and then her, of course, her daughter, redacted a lot of stuff. But a lot of people, maybe not, maybe even though she was intelligent, the African princess, a lot of people may not be able to read or write. They may not have wanted to tell their stories, particularly during this time frame.
Absolutely. And remember, this was the 1850s. So
Mhm.
she was the African princess was basically gifted to Queen Victoria as a slave. Basically, Queen Victoria had been sending emissaries to West Africa to try and stop the trade of slaves. She had outlawed slavery in England at that time, in Europe. She's outlawed. So now she's trying to get them to stop. And this one king was like, well, let's see how she feels about, having a slave of her own. And he sends the African princess to Queen Victoria in kind of a, petty way,
Right.
not realizing that, the queen was serious about this. She really believed that, all people should be treated equally. She thought this slave trade was horrendous, and she actually took Princess Sarah into the royal nursery. She
Right.
was raised as a royal, and so she became this kind of a little celebrity with the newspapers
Mhm.
because they'd never seen an African before. They didn't even know if an African could live in the climate
Right.
because it's wet and cold, and
Right.
from what they heard about Africa being so hot and humid, and they just thought that it was a lot of misunderstanding, obviously. But Queen Victoria was very progressive in that, and going against her advisors. They were like, get rid of her, she can't be here, and she was like, no, look, you could tell me about matters of state, but this is my family.
Right.
And so she took a stance, and we showcased that in the book, that her stance was, no, this is my family.
She actually treated her like a goddaughter, I
Yeah,
believe.
she actually treated her like a goddaughter. She
Yeah.
took care of her financially her whole life, and
Mhm.
even took care of her daughter. She had a daughter
Mhm.
for her whole life, so she was a part of the royal family. And yeah, it's quite a story. I'm so excited to be able to kind of weave it together and create a adventure for her, and have it be kind of like a Nancy Drew, meets Sherlock Holmes, that kind of thing. But it's a little African princess.
And speaking of the African princess, again, if you haven't picked it up, you need to do so. Jennifer Cody Kemp's book, The African Princess, based and you have to pronounce the name for me again, Jen, because I actually saw that same PBS special, so I was watching it too.
Oh, how about that?
Yes, it's a MOBA, right?
Amoba Aina.
Moba Aina. And yes, because I had read and also saw it where they were saying Queen Victoria treated her just like she was a daughter or godchild. She actually, allowed her to be educated. So as you mentioned, she was very intelligent and lived a life that most people would not have ever had the chance to do in the role kingdom. And then that maybe also goes back to again that persisting rumor that maybe Queen Victoria had a
Right.
soft spot for a certain reason. Maybe because she knew that, she looked like her or was somewhat, kin to her down the line, some kind of,
Right.
yeah.
Well, there's a scene in the book when she's first presented to the court, and she's brought over on ship, and the captain and his wife have really tried to prepare her. She's picked up several languages, and she's picked up the violin, and so she knows how to curtsy. And when she's presented, she does a curtsy, and the queen, compliments her, "Well done, child." And as her uncle is saying, she's no princess. Look at her, and she Queen Victoria says, "Oh no, I'm sure her blood is as royal as our own," and basically is like, I can see, the gleam of in her eyes that she is a princess, and it really just mocked their whole disdain for Princess Sarah.
Wow. And so you're mentioning that this is going to be a series. So how far are you thinking or planning ahead to follow her in her lifetime?
So this will be her young adult. I won't follow her into her adulthood. Unfortunately, her adulthood was a little bit more challenging. So, and I really what my thought process was when we sat down to write this was I wanted to make it like a Nancy Drew. Like seriously, like when I read Nancy Drew, I loved it.
I
But
do too.
obviously, we didn't have the books, with black and browns in it like they do, we can create now. We have that opportunity to share that story. I have four granddaughters and I want them, I dedicate this book to them and I
Mhm.
want them to be able to see themselves as a princess and what that means, what it means to them, what characteristics do they have that they can see in the African princess that will, kind of help them explore their boldness, their courage, their intellect. And so these stories, like this first story, is really Princess Sarah's origin story, kind of where she came from, but she also has a great adventure where she runs into some orphan children and she steps up to the plate and she actually helps them and gets other people involved, and it kind of shows her resilience because she's in a very foreign place, right?
I was about to say she's almost orphaned because she's been
Exactly.
taken from, where she lived and brought to England.
Mhm.
So she doesn't know anybody
She
here.
doesn't know anyone and she doesn't know their customs. And she, when she talks about sharing her food, the other orphans are like, sharing, where are you from? They don't, that's not something that they do.
All man for himself, right?
Right, exactly. So, I wanted the series to it's going to follow her and she will go back to Africa at probably, book three. Book
Okay.
two, it's the second book, I'm hoping to have it out in the next couple of months. But again, it's kind of
Nice.
like you're writing and it's your baby and sometimes you gotta push the baby out of the door sometimes.
Well, and I know you are a world traveler. Did you weave stories, from any other locations, or is it all kind of English based?
Yeah, it's all pretty much English based. I mean, I recently went to Egypt
Mhm.
and got to do a reading there, and I was so blown away that people actually remembered her, like they knew who she was. That was amazing. And I've done readings in Greece, and I'm going to London soon. I have a book event in London.
Nice.
So yeah, I am. But the story itself is mostly I tried to keep it period, the 1850s, London, and try and follow that historical piece of it, right? So that I can still be in the historical fiction section, but have some fun with it as well.
All right. Well, speaking of fun, where can people pick up this book? And you didn't make it very, very long. It's an easy read, and therefore, we're waiting on book two, ma'am.
Yes, yes. So the book is available on Amazon. And yes, I wanted to keep it short. What I'm finding is that mothers and grandmothers are reading it to their young kids. Young adults are reading it. And I'm in a book club that 25 years. And of course, they all supported me and bought the book and they all loved it. They are like, when is the next one's coming out? Like it's like almost a cliffhanger, like what's happening next to Princess Sarah. So
Mhm.
the African Princess will have the second book coming out this year. And yeah, it's only 100 pages. It's a great Sunday read by the pool or on the beach, or, just you want to cozy up and you want something that you're not going to have to go back to over and over again. You can read it in a couple of hours and it's a fun read. And, so definitely pick up The African Princess. She is available on Amazon. Yes, in hardback and soft cover.
All right, sounds good. Well, you heard it from the author herself, her debut novel, The African Princess, Jennifer Cody Kemp. We wish you much success. And of course, we're waiting on a part two. That would be the second book because this is going to be a series, and even number three. Meanwhile, I am sure that our day job is like, hey,
Hey.
you can do it all. You can sell and you can also write in this
Oh
way.
yeah.
You know what? And before we go, again, as Jen mentioned, it's available on Amazon. I want you to give some encouragement to, first time authors or people who are thinking about writing a book because, you're published now. You are officially an author, you're published.
Yes.
But if they're trying to do this and still hold down a 9 to 5, plus family, plus, spouses, plus kids, things like that, please give them some, words of encouragement because I know this couldn't have been easy. And like you said, you had one idea and then it totally change direction. So then you got to start from scratch.
Yes, absolutely. I would say if you have a story in you, get it on paper. That's sometimes we stumble and thinking it has to be perfect on paper. Get it out. Just put it on paper, and maybe you put it to the side and then you come back to it, or maybe you continue to work on it. Yeah, I was very private about this.
Mhm.
Not many people knew I was even writing a book. So when I,
Raise
yeah,
your hand here.
right. So when I said, I have a book launch, they were like, "What do you mean a book launch?" Like even my book club members, like I was very private about it because it is a private thing. It's when you're sharing a story that is coming from your soul. It's a very private thing, and it is like a baby. It's like your child, and it's hard to let go of it. But the second part of that is let it go, because just like a child, they're never going to be perfect. They have got to go out into the world and find a home. And I think that's what Princess Sarah has done. I wasn't sure, I thought I was writing it for a certain age group. And
Hmm.
now I found that she has a home in so many different people's lives, and men, women, little girls,
You said
teenagers,
grandmothers,
yeah,
teachers.
grandmothers,
Yeah.
it's found a home, and it's become because it came from a place inside of me and I let it go. And so get it on paper, and at some point you've got to let it go.
All right. Well, don't let this go without buying it. Jennifer Cody Kemp's debut novel. It's called The African Princess. You can find it on Amazon. Please get it, support her. And as we mentioned, we'll be waiting for book 2 of the series coming out
Yes.
very soon. Thank you
Yes.
so much, Jen, for
Thank
joining
you
us
so much,
today.
Tamara. I appreciate it.
No problem. And thank you for watching Good Morning Miramar. Until next time, see you.